is not a hero's journey story. It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of blindly following charismatic figures. At its core, Dune critiques fundamentalist movements, showing how messianic figures can lead to destruction rather than peace. Despite this anti-mythic message, the story follows the familiar beats of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, using these expectations to draw the audience in, only to ultimately subvert them. Many readers of the original Dune novel interpreted Paul's journey as a traditional hero's journey arc, which deeply frustrated author Frank Herbert. He never intended to glorify Paul's rise to power, but rather to warn against the dangers of charismatic leaders and messianic figures. Herbert's frustration led to him creating a follow-up story, Dune Messiah, which shattered the narrative of Dune being a traditional hero's journey story, making his true intentions abundantly clear. Nearly 60 years later, Herbert's legendary critique of messianic figures is finally being faithfully adapted to the big screen. While there have been multiple adaptations, Denis Villeneuve's two-part adaptation of the original Dune novel has proven to be the most successful. As of this recording, we have yet to see how Villeneuve handles the conclusion of Paul Atreides' tragic journey, but given the success of the previous two films, there is confidence that Dune Messiah will be done justice. Villeneuve's decision to split his adaptation into two films was a smart one. Dune is a very dense novel. There's simply no way to capture its depth in a feature-length film. The split allows Paul's character arc to be properly fleshed out. Villeneuve also chose to make Herbert's intentions regarding Paul's downfall clearer to the audience. Unlike previous adaptations that leaned into Paul's journey as a heroic rise, Villeneuve frames Paul's transformation as a deeply unsettling one. Even though the films lose some of the ambiguity of the novels, Paul's descent into the trappings of power become much starker. At the start of Dune Part 1, Paul is a young man with no ambition for power, despite being next in line to succeed his father as Duke of the House Atreides. His father, Leto, understands this.
Your grandfather said, "A great man doesn't seek to lead. He's called to it." And he answers. And if your answer is no, you'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be. My son.
After the tragic death of Duke Leto in a plot to destroy House Atreides, Paul is thrust into the role of Duke. He begins to have visions of war, death, famine, and destruction, all carried out in the name of his father. Though Paul resolves to prevent this grim future, multiple forces are pushing him in the direction for him to embrace his terrible purpose. His mother, the Lady Jessica, believes Paul to be the Kwisatz Haderach, a super being capable of seeing all timelines and possibilities. The native people of Arrakis, the Fremen, come to see Paul as the Lisan al-Gaib, their prophesied savior who will transform their desert world into a green paradise. Paul's own desire for revenge against the Harkonnens and the Emperor for his father's death further entangles him in this dark path. In Dune Part 2, power doesn't just corrupt, it strips our characters of their humanity. Paul desperately tries to escape his fate as the catalyst for a bloody jihad that will consume the entire known universe. Yet ultimately Paul succumbs when he drinks the water of life. This act serves as his metaphorical death, a point of no return, but in his resurrection, Paul is no longer Paul Atreides, the son of Leto Atreides. He is the Lisan al-Gaib, the Kwisatz Haderach, the voice from the outer world, the bringer of death and destruction. Jessica undergoes a similar transformation. In Dune Part 1, while Paul faces the Gom Jabbar test, Jessica fights back tears, silently reciting the Bene Gesserit mantra against fear. This moment encapsulates her internal conflict, torn between her role as a mother and her allegiance to the dogmatic Bene Gesserit sisterhood. When Jessica drinks the water of life, the mother who promised Leto to protect their son is gone. What remains is a cold, calculated, and fanatical individual, no longer guided by love. She manipulates Paul into following the same path. She pushes him to embrace his destiny, ignoring the catastrophic consequences for her son and ultimately the universe. Paul ultimately achieves his destiny. He liberates the Fremen from the tyranny of the Harkonnens, takes revenge on those responsible for his father's death, and becomes Emperor of the known universe. But unlike a typical hero's journey story, peace is not restored. In fact, the opposite happens. In order to achieve his goal, Paul surrenders his humanity, unleashing the very chaos and destruction he hoped to avoid, solidifying his tragic role as the catalyst for a universe-wide war. Paul's loss of humanity isn't solely due to the external forces that solidified his rise to power. It's his own desire for revenge and power that ultimately seals his downfall. At the beginning of Dune Part 2, Paul is reminded that his father Leto wasn't driven by vengeance, yet Paul responds claiming he is not like his father. This admission reveals the depth of his internal transformation. Despite centuries of manipulation and eugenics orchestrated by the Bene Gesserit, it's ultimately Paul's own choices that lead him down this dark path. His ambition for power, coupled with the intense need to avenge his father's death, overrides the lessons Leto taught him, propelling Paul into a position where he no longer recognizes the man he once could have been. Dune masterfully lures its audience in the familiar beats of the hero's journey, only to subvert those expectations at every turn. Paul Atreides' rise to power mirrors that of countless mythic figures, yet instead of restoring the peace, his ascension brings chaos and suffering to an unimaginable scale. Frank Herbert's deconstruction of the classical hero archetype serves as a stark warning about the dangers of blind faith in charismatic leaders. Paul Atreides is simply not a victim of fate. He makes the choices that solidifies his transformation into the kind of leader his father sought to oppose. Dune challenges its audience to question the myths they have been conditioned to admire, forcing them to confront the truth that power often comes at a devastating cost to the individual and the collective. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this latest video, and if you did, make sure to give this video a like. And if you want more content like this, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell notification so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And shout out to Ridley and Moist Critical. Thanks for watching.